Welcome to the Darnell and Cody show, where we talk about political, social, and philosophical issues currently relevant to us as a society. Today, we're going to be talking about the election results. Obviously, Biden has won enough electoral college votes, or at least according to the voting themselves, it seems to be that he will win the electoral college votes in the coming months. And then Trump has yet to concede. So, just going right into it, it seems like with Biden's first speech accepting the win, he was claiming to try and push for unity. He said that he had enough states that went blue for him, but the bottom line was that he was trying to send a message in which he was trying to portray that he wasn't just representing the blue states. He was trying to get, push the message that well, he was elected by the blue states, he's going to be represented, or as a president representing everybody in the country, not just the people that voted him into office. And another impressive thing that he was able to do pretty quickly on, he even had a meeting earlier today in which he discussed his plans for COVID-19. He's already putting together a task force, and he's already picked his people who are going to be assembling this task force. So they're going to be looking at the economic side of the COVID crisis, as well as getting a vaccine and basically trying to make the vaccine as available as possible to everybody as well. So overall, it seems like his response has already been just far, far better than Trump in terms of unity, but as well as with this COVID crisis, which in my opinion kind of goes hand in hand with unity. We're all in it together with something like a pandemic. So just shifting it right over to you, Darnell. Do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, it is. On one hand, I am very distraught that we have a president that's refusing to accept the democratic process in the election. But on the other hand, I'm also should I say ambivalent. If he wants to check for voter fraud, I mean that's his prerogative. So let's say he thinks there is some shifty things going on. Sure, if he wants to investigate it, that's fine. I have no problem with that either. Like just investigate it, and then the results are gonna come out, and it's gonna be what it is. Like I don't think there's going to be some crazy. There's no controversy behind this in my opinion. So truth is gonna come out. It's just a little tantrum he's throwing. In the end, he has to concede because there's no other option for him. I mean, the facts are staring him in the face. But that said, if he does want to have an investigation, I don't think people should get too caught up in that. I mean, it's whatever. Let him have his little investigation. Let him do what he wants. At the end of the day, Joe Biden is the president elect, so he's gonna get the job. So people should not get too caught up in that rhetoric that Trump is saying like, oh, this isn't over and stuff like that. I mean, everyone that's aware of the situation is basically over. Biden's gonna get the nomination. He did get the nomination. He's gonna be the next president. So people should focus on that instead of trying to it's giving him the spotlight on this is basically what he wants. He wants more attention on it. Just let him throw his little tantrum. Nothing's gonna change. Biden's the next president. Yeah, think about unity you mentioned. I'm a little bit less optimistic on that. If you look at the voting records, it was actually very interesting. Basically, Trump improved his voting block and Latinos. Every block basically besides white males, white college educated males, was the only block that he didn't have a boom in for a voting population wise, which is like a surprising statistic. So we have to realize that it's not just a bunch of rednecks that are supporting Trump. There is a genuine division in this country that doesn't just. It's not a racial issue in my mind. It's always been a socioeconomic issue. It's always been something like an anti-establishment issue, and I don't think that's going to change with Joe Biden. purely on a racial basis, I do think that Joe Biden will probably come out ahead just on the virtue of the fact that he's not like a racially insensitive guy. But in terms of the general division in the country, coming from a socioeconomic point of view, I think there's many people are still distraught over this. I mean, I don't think like people are very excited about Joe Biden in general. It was just someone to vote for against Trump. So there's gonna be these this whole problem of unity is not gonna go away until we actually have someone that's fighting for the people. And I don't think that's not Joe Biden. That's not Trump. We need to focus on the future right now, because these next 4 years is business as usual in the worst possible way. So the next 4 years, we got to get a candidate out there that's gonna really actually bring some progressive changes to the country.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, just looking back, like you were saying, basically the Biden presidency is going to be just the establishment as usual. Like it basically was under Obama, which turned out to be an abject failure. And I really don't think that the Democrats are going to like reconcile with the way things that have gone. They really predicted a blowout, and like they thought they were going to potentially even win the Senate and get rid of Mitch McConnell and guys like Lindsey Graham. And I mean, it just absolutely did not work out at all the way that anyone had predicted it would with the polling. I mean, the people that do the polling themselves need to really rethink how they measure these things. Probably just entirely redo the way that they do polling in general. But the bottom line is that the Democrats' messaging was flawed, and um, the polling was flawed, and the Democrats really failed to hit home with Latino and Black people in general this time, as well as the working class. Ohio should have been much, much closer than it was. In my opinion, if we had gone with someone like Andrew Yang, we probably would have been able to win Ohio. Um, Bernie Sanders and uh, like the progressive movement really speaks to those kind of people as well, and the establishment just absolutely does not reach these people. They abjectly oppose the people like Biden and the establishment. Um, I mean, I think that we're not going to have anything of like substance from Biden. We probably, at best, are going to get the minimum wage and then the public health care option, which is good. It's progress. And then having people acknowledge science, and like I was saying, like he's taking COVID seriously and he believes in global warming. So, it's better than nothing. But he's basically going to be running his campaign as a neoliberal corporatist, and he's not going to be winning over working class people, which is what Democrats really, really need to be trying to aim their messaging towards. And that's just not going to happen under Biden. The good news is that hopefully he will only run for 4 years, so um, we can probably have another primary and we can get somebody better than Kamala Harris theoretically, but I'm really worried the establishment's going to try and be pushing Kamala Harris extremely hard, and as well as the media, obviously, which is a tool of the establishment. But I would like to get into Trump's, you know, claims of fraud. But if you have anything to add just about like Biden's presidency overall, all before we get into that.
Yeah, I'm also very afraid that the establishment is going to push Kamala Harris. I mean, it's a guarantee they're going to. At this point, by choosing her as the VP, they're basically saying that we're going to groom you into being the next candidate for president. And my biggest concern is that she's likely going to get elected because she's a woman and she's black. She's a woman of minority. And that's like, I'm all for having a woman, a colored minority president, like, but that should not be a boon to being a president. That should not be something that's like actually going to count towards someone being voted into office. Like that's racism. Like if you think about it, like, oh, we're gonna vote for her because she's black and we need her. We need a black person on the virtue of being black. I mean, it's just like it's insanity. Like no job should have this kind of like affirmative action thing to it, especially the presidency. So I hope whoever gets elected is based on merit, and the establishment hopefully won't have as much say this time around, or next time around when I really hope more people go out and vote. Because you know what the biggest irony is that you had not so much irony, the tragedy is that we had Bernie Sanders basically just bow down to the establishment and say, all right, I'll put my full weight behind Joe Biden. And they still, like, to this day, like, if you talk about this election today, how it wasn't a blowout, you know who they're blaming? They're blaming the progressives. They're saying the progressives are, like subterfuging the Democratic Party. They have the audacity to actually blame progressives for their incompetency and their failure to represent the true interests of the people. So unless they fix that, I honestly don't think they'll even win the next election if they put a Kamala Harris type figure that's a corporatist. They need someone that actually is a progressive. They want to have a chance, in my opinion, because people are gonna look at this and they're gonna be like, oh, it's some random guy against some usual classic politician that doesn't really represent my interests. Just plays these games. This coronavirus thing is the biggest culmination representation of this. It's politicians playing games, sitting comfy and like having recess, like saying, "Oh, we're not going to do anything about this till the next session" and stuff like that. When people are out of jobs, people are starving, people don't have like money to pay their bills. It's insanity, and I think it's going to catch up with them. It has to catch up with them because we can't have a system like this for long.
Yeah, I think having no stimulus honestly hurt Democrats more than it hurt Trump. Because they were just able to point to how the Democrats weren't willing to agree to whatever Trump deal he was offering. And Trump was willing to make deals, and yeah, it wasn't exactly fantastic, but he was willing to give average Americans like direct payment and stuff like that, and that's absolutely what people want. And like you were saying earlier, like the whole thing with Bernie Sanders was they literally like played this game where they try and say that this socialism or like the Medicare for all, blah blah blah, the whole progressive agenda is something that people abjectly oppose or whatever. But then when you even look at states like Florida, which is a pretty red state, to be honest, it's not purple, it's gone red since Bill Clinton. And they even voted for a minimum wage increase to $15, which a lot of people were saying was insane. But Florida, a red state, just universally agreed because of direct initiatives which they allow in their state, which, in my opinion, like the federal government should be doing these kinds of direct initiatives, and every state should have them as well. But Florida literally passed $15 minimum wage, and it's a red state. Like people just wholeheartedly agree with the fact that people deserve a living wage, and they shouldn't be working 70 hours a week in order to pay for their kids to have food on the table and stuff like that. I mean, I think that was one of the biggest things that we got in terms of messaging from this election is like even people that are from red states agree that everyone deserves living wage. They don't think that the corporations should just rip people off and have them work like slave labor, essentially, 7.25 or 7.50, what are the federal minimum wages now? And these people literally voted by like a 67% majority to pass the $15 minimum wage statewide. That's what Bernie Sanders himself was proposing. So I just, and they were saying that was like radical. So, in my opinion, the left really needs to just rethink about their entire messaging. Basically, just focus on the working class. That's all you have to do. If average Americans win, then your party wins. But I'm gonna move on to Trump's fraud, unless you have anything, or Trump's claims of fraud, unless you have anything else to add, Darnell.
Yeah, let's move on to that.
All right, so yeah, yeah, like I was saying earlier in the podcast, Trump is saying all these states are not going for him due to his claims of fraud, his election, or I mean, I'm sorry, his campaign committee is also claiming a lot of this stuff. One of the funniest things that I saw just yesterday was that Fox News pulled or cut when his um, one of his spokesmen was talking about how there is election fraud, because even Fox News knows that these are incoherent and baseless claims. So he's basically trying to go on press conferences like daily, or he's having his campaign's spokesman go on press conferences, and he said he's easily won, looking at only legal votes, quote unquote. The illegal votes are the ones that swing the results. He has offered no evidence. His campaign has offered no evidence of any of these claims that they're trying to propose at this point. A lot of his supporters, unfortunately, are expressing open belief that Trump won the election and that the results are fraudulent, and they're even going as far as to try and push their way into counting areas where they're literally like counting votes in a private area. And there are people who are on Trump's, they're not necessarily Trump's, but they're GOP observers. And people are trying to claim that these people have been kicked out from the voting locations where they count the votes. Um, None of this has been true. There's been one incident in Philadelphia where a GOP vote watcher wasn't allowed in the voting counting location, but the city actually acknowledged the mistake within an hour, and then the mistake was corrected and the guy was allowed in. And they try and blow this one thing up as if this is like a nationwide issue, where the city itself has acknowledged its mistake and corrected it within an hour. Um, I mean, to me, this is just it's just baseless and nonsensical. Your side lost, and a lot of people are accepting the results of the election, but there are certain diehard fans that are trying to follow their president. And this is where someone like Trump becomes extremely dangerous and disruptionist, where he literally is saying like, I won the elections and this is all fraud, and he has a certain portion of his supporters that are willing to literally like commit felonies in order to support him, such as like barging into voting location areas.
Yeah, like I said in the beginning, it is like I personally am a little bit disturbed by this whole ordeal, but ultimately, I don't think there's any foul play. So if he wants to investigate it, it's just that's his right to investigate. If he thinks there's something going on, fine. If it was the other way around, I'll say the same thing. Like, investigate it. If anything, the more investigation there is, the more certainty that we know. Like, okay, you lost. You can shut up now and you can move on. I'm not really, unless like there's something shifty going on from his side where he's gonna like try to manipulate the vote somehow after the fact, which I don't think is possible. I think it's just this last little hurrah, like little tantrum that he has to throw around, go down swinging, and as childish and unproductive as it is, I'm fine with it. Like, let him do it. Let's not focus on him doing this. We got to be focusing on like, okay, what are we looking at in the Biden presidency? What do we work towards for 2024 when Biden's gone? These are things that are important to me. I think, because ultimately, this might be my opinion, I'm not sure, but ultimately, I think Trump is powerless. There's nothing he can do about this. So if he wants to throw a tantrum, and he'll eventually lose steam. I don't really think it's that big of an issue. What do you think, Cody?
I do agree with you. I overall think that Trump is going to end up powerless to change the results of this. But I also think that he has the power to start up his own TV network after he leaves the office, which I firmly believe is going to be his plan. And I'm just firmly troubled by the fact that there are so many people that are willing to call into question just the fundamental basis of like this whole process has been extremely transparent. Anyone who is willing to actually like look into the facts and the data that's at hand, it's extremely transparent in the way that every single county has done this. There has been people on both sides watching this. It's been extremely fair. No one has called into question the way that this has gone except for people that are within the Trump campaign or like far right conspiracy theorists. And I mean, I don't believe that everyone is saying that this is a fraudulent election is a conspiracy theorist. I'm saying like the journalists, quote unquote, that work for places like Breitbart. But the bottom line is that it's extremely troubling for someone who's the president, sitting president, to try and behave like you said, like it's just a tantrum. But it's not just a tantrum when it's like the basis of our entire democracy. And I mean, I'm not really too concerned about the way things are gonna go in terms of like who's gonna sit in the White House in February. But I am troubled about the way that his supporters may behave in the coming years. And I'm just I really would just wish that the Democrats had like a call of sanity instead of just pushing this neoliberalism, to be honest, because I mean, we saw by the election results, the Democrats abjectly failed in their goals, and people absolutely voted against the establishment, if anything, when they were voting for Trump. And I mean, I just, I don't think that the Democrats are going to offer any solution for these people who are calling into question the legitimacy of the election, or people who are just fed up with the way things have gone for 20, 30 years. So I worry for violence in our nation, to be honest.
Right, and we've seen a lot of these violent protests with and riots with Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. It's surprising to me because we have these riots over racial issues, or police brutality, I should say. But we don't really have that kind of movement against like the wealth gap, or well, the wealth gap itself is not something that like I'm against like necessarily. I don't think that because there's a wealth gap, like the wealth gap is evil. More so, I think we have to look at it like there's there's a surplus of money in some sense in this country, and it's not going to the people that need it the most. So we saw this with the stimulus bill. We had enough money to give everyone $1,000 a month for like 8 months, and we gave like billions of dollars to hundreds of billions of dollars to like huge corporations. And there was that whole scandal where the small businesses loans were going to companies like the Lakers. How's the Lakers qualifying for small business? I mean, you know what I mean? So we're going through these crazy situations, and these are the things that, in my opinion, people should be more aware of and rioting in the streets for and protesting. Like, how is it that Amazon pays zeros in federal taxes? How is that this Jeff Bezos guy is on track to become the first trillionaire? And we have people that work for him that aren't getting adequate pay, aren't getting adequate health care, and nobody's really fighting for these people.
Get bathroom breaks.
Right, they can get bathroom breaks. It's insane. So these are the things that I feel like people need to fight for more vocally and more protesting for, instead of these little. I don't want to say little. I don't want to belittle the police brutality movement. That's definitely important, but a lot of those police brutality things too are interconnected with the poverty that we're facing, and the socioeconomic issues we're facing as a culture. A lot of these um, this distrust between police and low income families, it does sprout from income inequality, which and poverty, which creates what crime. It's plain as day for everyone to see. And we do need a police reform. That's a separate issue, but what I'm saying is connected fundamentally to the root of socioeconomic issues. And unless we tackle those socioeconomic issues, the fundamental branches and the things that come as a wave of that, as a ripple effect, aren't going to change. And I feel like that's what Biden represents, the very outskirts of the ripple. He's going to tackle these little issues on the outskirts, on the margins, and say that he's so much better than Trump. When in reality, I really don't think he's someone that maintains that bubble when that bubble needs to be popped, so that someone actually that can change these fundamental issues can get into power.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, if you looked at who voted for Biden, it was wealthy suburban areas. I mean, that's pretty much how Pennsylvania swung for Biden and potentially even Georgia. And I mean, obviously, California, New York, Virginia, all these places, they have the suburban vote on lock. Those people are already doing pretty well. Who is really, really struggling in our nation? It's the working class, the people who are uh, lost their job from COVID. They weren't able to work from home. It's people that are getting their jobs sent over to China, which literally Trump addressed, which in my opinion is why he won a great portion of the votes against Biden. I really don't think the Democrats are going to reckon with this without somebody just outside of the establishment. The establishment just wants to keep going business as usual. And like you said, like Biden's just business as usual as well. I it has to be someone like Yang next time around. I really worry for our nation if we elect somebody like Kamala Harris instead.
And that's the fight that we have to begin now. I'm already looking past the Biden presidency. Like I don't really see anything really meaningful happening. Maybe we'll get better healthcare, like slightly better healthcare. Maybe we'll get something done with climate change. But ultimately, this whole election was a lose lose for the American people. Um, I'm sure there's a select few people who are genuinely happy for Biden, but the people on TV, the talking heads on TV, don't represent how people actually feel. Like the woman on The View, or the journalists on your TV, like mainstream media, they don't represent how people actually feel, or celebrities. I'm baffled always when I see how these celebrities think like their opinions represent the common the voice of middle class America or the working class. So right now, if you really want a strong America, then we have to look past Biden and who's going to be the next guy that's going to step up. And it can be from either party, honestly, in my opinion. It doesn't have to be a Democrat. And that's why I look forward to movements like Unity 2020 or Unity 2024 at this point, where there are going to be someone that's a third party or someone that can unite people and really just fight for the common goal of making a better America instead of a better corporate America.
Yeah, I 100% agree. My best case scenario is that Yang defeats Kamala Harris in the primary for the DNC in 2024. If that doesn't happen, then we absolutely have to go with Brett Weinstein's idea with 2024 unity plan. And I look forward to things going the way that we hope they go, but uh, just keep your fingers crossed and keep pushing the agenda and let everybody know, to be honest. If you have anything else to add, Darnell, but Otherwise, I think we're just gonna wrap it up here.
Yeah, I think that's all for today. We'll catch you guys next episode.